A very important and valuable part of America's history is missing from our national story. The National Women's History Museum currently raises awareness and honors women's diverse experiences and achievements through the dynamic museum, educational programs, scholarships, and research. So let's learn a little bit about the National Women's History Museum. The Women's History Museum likes to preserve and share stories of females who have made an impact throughout history, including people like Amelia Earhart, who was the first female aviator to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean, as well as Dorothy Hodgkins, who was awarded the Nobel Prize for her work on the discovery of both the structure of penicillin and later on insulin, making significant improvements in the healthcare system. Although the museum is currently only online, it soon hopes to be housed prominently among the other great museums of Washington, D.C., as well as be the first museum in any national capital to show a full scope of the history of its women, and it will also serve as a guiding light to people everywhere. Since the museum is online, it's really easy to get to. Type in NWHM.org and hit enter, and it'll take you to their homepage. It'll show you exhibits that you can explore, including Parading for Progress, Standing Up for Change, On the March, and even more. Throughout this tour, we will take a peek into each exhibit, but I won't go into too much detail, as you should take a look at them for yourselves, and I don't want to spoil any of the exciting as well as surprising things women have been able to do and gone through throughout history. So let's take a look at some of these exhibits. In order to look at the exhibits, you click on which exhibit you want to look at. For example, I'm going to start with Standing Up for Change. You click on the exhibit and you scroll down. Hit Explore the exhibit and it'll take you to a Google Arts and Culture Drive. This exhibit was opened up February 1st in 2016, as you can see on the date right there. This exhibit focuses on standing up for change and the African American women in the Civil Rights Movement. As you scroll through, it gives you a little background detail as what the civil rights are. It also looks at what the movement or thing is rooted in. For this example, it was rooted in the 19th century movement for abolition and women's suffrage. It also looks at key people who were part of this movement, such as Sovereign Truth, who was a slave, for abolition in the civil rights movement at the 1851 Women's Convention in Akron, Ohio. As you can see, it starts off in 1851, and as it goes on, it gets further and further away from then and gets closer and closer to now. You see people that played a key role in the different movements that came along, as well as groups that were formed in order to support or go against different things. When you think about the civil rights movement in the mid-century, someone who might come to mind is Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks was a well-known American civil rights activist who refused to give up her seat on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. Due to this, she was arrested. Her actions of not giving up her seat indirectly led to one of the most significant civil rights legislation of American history being written. It doesn't just focus on the women that were involved. It also looks at legislation that was put into place, as well as talks about Martin Luther King Jr., who had a huge part in doing this. From the beginning, African American men and women added ideas to the solution for racism and oppression. They overcame the double bind of racism and sexism, and also made the civil rights as well as the women's suffrage movement possible. The next one I decided to look at was about Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman's site is a little different than the one before. When you hit Explore the exhibit, it does take you to an Art and Culture Drive, but this time it's not a PowerPoint. It's almost like a website. For those of you who don't know, Harriet Tubman was a conductor of the Underground Railroad, who made several trips into slaveholding states, led dozens of individuals to freedom in the North, as well as worked as a nurse and a spy for the Union Army during the Civil War. Throughout the website, or the documentation as you might call it, it shares personal information such as her actual name, which is Arminta Ross, who was born in Dorsetshire County in Maryland, in or around 1922. It goes on to talk about what she did growing up, which she actually worked as a field hand for many years, loading and unloading wood, carrying heavy burdens, but it all developed into great strength and determination, as we can see. It talks about the cruel experiences that she had to endure, such as her first violent experience when she was only 12 years old, and then talked about the other ones that she dealt with while she was a slave. As you can see, each exhibit is a little different. One was a website, one took you to a PowerPoint. This one keeps you on the website, but it gives you a little PowerPoint to look at. It looks at the women of NASA and their essential role that they played. Pearl Young was the first woman hired by the NACA in 1922. She was originally hired as an instrument research in the research division, but then was soon joined by Kitty O'Brien Joyner in 1939, as well as being joined by Verna Huckle, who also started in 1939. But by 1945, she was the section head and in charge of up to 17 women. The exhibit goes on to continue mentioning women who played a vital role in NASA at some point, and even mentions a movie from 2016 called Hidden Figures, which follows the story of a team of female African-American mathematicians who served a vital role in NASA during the early years of the space program. Being a nursing student myself, something that I definitely wanted to look into was the time and history of nursing in the US. This one was published March 7th in 2018, so very recently. It starts off in 1975 and goes on till current time. It talks about people who played key roles, such as the people who founded nursing, the first Black woman to graduate from nursing school, the first person to get an award, as well as notices changes, especially in the 2000s, with men increasing their rates of being nurses by almost 660%, as you will see. The mission of the National Women's History Museum is to educate, inspire, empower, and shape the future by integrating women's distinctive history into the culture and history of the United States. Although I wasn't able to get through all the exhibits today, I hope you got an idea of what this museum just online has to offer, and I can't wait to see what it's going to look like when they get into their new building. Besides the exhibits, the website has much to offer, including biographies of specific people, like Ida B. Wells, which we talked about in the first exhibit that I introduced us to, as well as a list of more that they have. They have articles and different features that you can check out, and if you want to get more involved, you can either donate or hit the Support Us button. You can become a member or sign up for emails. If you're a student or an educator, you can look up biographies, topics to explore, and look at National History Days. If you just want to look at more of the exhibits or articles, just go to the Women's History link and it'll take you to all the different places that you can look at. To learn more about them, you can hit their About Us button. You can contact them, look at the people that are involved now, look at their mission and vision, and the history of how that they've come about.